Anna stood in front of her late father's barn just after sunrise, when the mist still sat low on the fields. The barn looked tired and quiet, with faded boards and a roof that dipped in the middle. She had not come here since the funeral, and the place felt like a locked room inside her chest. Selling the barn sounded simple when she said it out loud to friends in town. Now that she was here, nothing felt simple at all. She walked to the big doors and pushed them open with both hands, and the hinges complained in a long rough sound. Dust floated in the light like tiny bright seeds, turning the air into a soft haze. The smell of old wood, dry hay, and oil hit her at once, and it brought back memories she did not invite. Her father had been the kind of man who fixed everything instead of replacing it. He kept tools in neat rows, and he wrote labels on jars like he was preparing for a day that might never come. Anna stepped inside slowly, careful where she placed her feet, as if the barn could break from being watched too closely. Sunbeams fell across the floor in long stripes, and she saw scuff marks that had been made by years of moving crates and equipment. A workbench sat against the left wall, still holding a few nails, a dull pencil, and a folded cloth. A small window near the back let in a thin line of breeze, and the dust moved with it. She told herself she came here to clean, measure, and call a buyer, and she repeated that thought like a steady rhythm. She carried a notebook and a small tape measure, but her hands kept drifting to familiar objects. A rusty lantern, a half-empty paint can, and a wooden box filled with bolts made her pause. Her father's habits seemed frozen in place, like he could walk in any minute and continue his work. Anna tried to focus on the practical things, like how much the land could bring and what repairs the buyer might demand. Still, her eyes kept searching, as if the barn was holding a sentence she had not finished reading. At the center of the barn was a wide open space where her father used to sort supplies. The boards there looked darker than the rest, like they had been scrubbed too many times. Anna knelt and ran her fingers over the floor, feeling small grooves and dents. The wood was solid, but one plank gave a faint hollow sound when she tapped it. She tapped again, slower this time, and the sound stayed different from the boards around it. She stood up and looked around, half expecting someone to tell her she was imagining things. No one was there, only the soft creak of the building settling. Anna took a breath and pressed the tip of her shoe against the edge of the plank. It did not move, but she felt a slight gap where the wood met the next board. Her father had always said that buildings talk if you listen long enough. She had laughed at him then, and now she felt a strange urge to listen. Anna walked to the workbench and searched through drawers until she found a flat tool that could pry without snapping. She held it in her hand and hesitated, because lifting that board felt like crossing a line. Part of her worried she would find nothing, and part of her worried she would find something she was not ready to carry. She told herself it was only an old barn with old wood, and she had a right to check for damage before selling. She slid the tool into the narrow gap and pushed gently. The board resisted at first, then gave with a small shift that made her heart jump. She pulled again, using steady pressure, and the plank lifted just enough for her to grip it. A dry scrape echoed through the barn as she raised the board and set it aside. Underneath was a shallow space packed with dirt and small stones. She stared at it, confused, because it looked like someone had filled a hidden pocket on purpose. Anna used her hands to brush aside the loose dirt, and her fingers touched something smooth and hard. She paused, then brushed more carefully, and a corner of metal appeared. The metal was wrapped in oilcloth that had turned brown with age. Her breath shortened as she peeled the cloth back inch by inch. Beneath it sat a small steel box with a simple latch and no markings. She sat back on her heels and looked at the box like it might move on its own. The barn felt suddenly smaller, and the silence pressed on her ears. She tried to remember if her father ever mentioned a box, a secret spot, or anything hidden. He had been private about some things, but he was not a man who played games. If this was here, it had a reason, and that reason was now staring at her. Anna carried the box to the workbench and wiped it with the folded cloth. The latch was stiff, and she worked it gently until it clicked free. Her hands trembled slightly, and she blamed the cold air in the barn. She lifted the lid slowly, as if opening it too fast would spill the past across the floor. Inside were neatly stacked papers, a small cloth pouch, and an envelope with her name written in her father's handwriting. She froze when she saw her name, because it made him feel close in a way she did not expect. The letters were careful and familiar, the same way he used to label jars and tool bins. Anna touched the envelope lightly, then pulled it out and held it to the light. The paper was thick, and the flap was sealed with a strip of old tape. She swallowed, feeling a mix of fear and hope, like standing at the edge of a new road. She opened the envelope and unfolded the letter with slow, careful fingers. The first line made her eyes sting, because it sounded like his voice in her head. He wrote that he was sorry for the weight he left behind. He wrote that he had built the barn with his own hands, but he had built something else too, something he never talked about in town. He wrote that he hid the box because he wanted Anna to find it only when she was ready to choose her own path. Anna read the letter once, then read it again, making sure she did not misunderstand. Her father explained that years ago, he helped a friend start a small business that later grew into something much bigger. He did not call it a fortune or a miracle, but he admitted it had brought unexpected value. He wrote that the papers in the box were proof of what he owned, and proof of what he wanted her to do with it. He wrote that she should not rush, and she should not tell everyone, and she should first speak to one person he trusted. The name he wrote was Ben, the local mechanic who had known her father for most of his life. Anna stared at the name, because Ben was friendly but quiet, and he never talked much about the past. She had seen him at the funeral, standing near the back, hands folded, eyes down. He had offered help, but she had been too numb to accept it. Now the letter made it sound like Ben was part of a story she never knew existed. Anna set the letter down and looked at the other items in the box. The cloth pouch felt heavier than it should, and she loosened the string and peeked inside. It held a ring with a small dark stone, simple and old, the kind of thing her father would keep for meaning, not for style. Beneath the pouch were documents folded into thick stacks. Some pages had official stamps, and others had signatures that looked important. She spread a few papers on the bench, trying to make sense of them in the dusty light. There were dates, company names, and numbers that made her head spin. She was not sure what it all meant, but she could tell it was real. Her father had always been careful, and the pages were organized with a kind of patient logic. Anna felt a sudden ache, because it meant he had been carrying this alone while she lived a simple life, thinking she knew him fully. Outside, the wind picked up and made the barn doors shift slightly, as if the building sighed. Anna gathered the papers back into the box with a careful urgency, like protecting a fragile truth. She tucked the letter into her notebook, close to her heart. She looked toward the small window at the back and saw the road that led into town. For the first time since her father passed, she felt something besides loss. Anna closed the box and held it against her chest, breathing in the smell of oilcloth and old wood. Selling the barn had felt like closing a chapter, but now it felt like opening a hidden one. She thought about Ben and the trust her father placed in him. She thought about the words in the letter, especially the part about choosing her own path. Then she stepped out of the barn with the box in her hands, and the morning light felt sharper than before. Anna locked the barn doors and walked toward her car with the metal box held tightly in her arms. The road back to town felt longer than usual, and every turn made her more aware of what she carried. Her father's words repeated in her mind like a quiet guide. She did not feel rich or lucky, she felt chosen for something she did not yet understand. The town looked the same as always, with small shops and familiar faces moving through their routines. Anna parked near the old garage where Ben worked, and for a moment she stayed in the car. She watched Ben through the open door of the garage as he worked on an engine with calm focus. He looked older than she remembered, with more gray in his hair and slower movements. Still, there was something steady about him that made her trust her father's choice. Anna stepped out and walked toward the garage, the sound of tools echoing around her. Ben noticed her and straightened up, wiping his hands on a cloth. His eyes softened when he saw her, and he gave a small nod instead of words. She greeted him quietly and asked if they could talk somewhere private. Ben looked at her face, saw the weight there, and nodded again. They moved to a small office at the back of the garage where dust covered old shelves and faded calendars. Anna placed the box on the table between them, and Ben's eyes dropped to it immediately. He did not touch it. but his shoulders shifted like he had been expecting this moment. Anna told him about the barn floor and the letter, choosing her words carefully. Ben listened without interrupting, his face serious but not surprised. When Anna finished, Ben let out a slow breath and sat down across from her. He said her father had been a quiet man with strong values and long patience. He said years ago, her father helped a group of people build something honest when they had nothing but effort and trust. Ben explained that the papers in the box were proof of ownership that had grown quietly over time. He did not name exact numbers, but he said it was enough to change many lives if handled wisely. Anna felt her chest tighten as she tried to absorb his words. She asked why her father never told her any of this. Ben said some people protect others by staying silent. He said her father wanted Anna to live freely without expectations hanging over her. He wanted her to choose who she became before she chose what to do with what he left behind. Ben said the barn was not just a hiding place, it was a test of patience and attention. Anna asked what she should do next, and her voice shook despite her effort to stay calm. Ben told her not to rush and not to let excitement drive her steps. He said the first thing was to learn and understand what the papers truly meant. He offered to help her contact a trusted advisor who had once worked with her father. He warned her that money could bring noise and pressure if revealed too soon. They talked for a long time, and Anna felt the hours pass without noticing. Ben spoke simply, without big promises or fear. He treated the situation like a responsibility rather than a surprise gift. That made Anna feel safer, like she was not alone in carrying her father's hidden story. When she finally stood to leave, Ben reminded her that her father believed she would do the right thing in her own way. Anna drove home with the box resting on the seat beside her, secured by the belt like a silent passenger. Her house felt different when she walked inside, as if the walls had heard something new. She placed the box on her kitchen table and made a cup of tea she barely drank. Her eyes kept moving from the box to the window and back again. She thought about her life as it was and how quietly it could change. That night, sleep came slowly and lightly. Anna dreamed of the barn filled with sunlight and voices she could not quite hear. She dreamed of her father standing near the door, watching without speaking. When she woke before dawn, she felt calm instead of afraid. She decided that before making any choices, she needed to understand herself better. Over the next few days, Anna followed her normal routine while keeping the box hidden in a locked cabinet. She went to work, greeted neighbors, and answered messages about the barn sale without committing to anything. Each normal task felt slightly unreal, like she was living two lives at once. One life was simple and familiar, and the other waited quietly behind a closed door. Anna began reading the papers in small pieces each evening. She learned about shares, agreements, and long-term plans her father had trusted enough to leave untouched. The language was formal, but the meaning became clearer with time. It was not sudden wealth but steady growth built over years. She realized her father valued stability more than display, and that lesson stayed with her. As the days passed, rumors started to move through town about the barn sale. Some people asked questions, and others offered advice she did not request. Anna listened politely and said little. She noticed how quickly people imagine value where they thought opportunity existed. It reminded her of Ben's warning and strengthened her resolve to stay quiet. One afternoon, Anna returned to the barn alone. She walked the floor where the board had been lifted and replaced it carefully. She stood in the center of the space and looked around with new eyes. The barn no longer felt like a burden from the past. It felt like a bridge between what her father built and what she might build next. Anna sat on an old crate and let the silence settle around her. She thought about fixing the barn instead of selling it. She imagined it becoming something useful again, something that served others quietly. She did not decide anything that day, but she allowed the idea to exist. That alone felt like progress. When Anna left the barn, the sun was low and warm against her back. She felt a growing sense of purpose that was not tied to money alone. Her father's letter had not given instructions, only trust. That trust became heavier and stronger with each passing day. By the end of the week, Anna knew one thing clearly. Whatever lay ahead, She would not let fear or pressure decide for her. The discovery under the barn floor had not just changed her future. It had changed how she saw herself. And that change was only beginning. Anna spent the next morning walking through town with slower steps than usual. She noticed details she once ignored, like the cracks in the sidewalk and the quiet worry on familiar faces. The box and its meaning followed her everywhere, even when it stayed locked at home. She felt different from the person she had been only a week ago. The change was not loud, but it was steady. At work she struggled to focus, and simple tasks took longer than normal. Her thoughts kept returning to the papers and to her father's careful handwriting. She wondered how many mornings he had woken up carrying this secret without letting it shape his kindness. That thought made her respect him even more. She realized that whatever she did next should honor that quiet strength. After work, Anna visited Ben again, and this time she brought a notebook filled with questions. Ben welcomed her with the same calm expression and listened closely as she spoke. She asked about responsibility and risk, and about what happens when people learn too much too fast. Ben answered patiently and reminded her that time was her ally. He said good choices grow better when they are not rushed. Ben shared stories about her father that Anna had never heard before. He spoke of late nights fixing machines for neighbors who could not pay. He spoke of plans her father had sketched and then set aside because family mattered more. Each story added a new layer to the man she thought she knew. Anna felt proud and sad at the same time. One evening Anna invited her close friend Mary over for dinner. Mary had been part of her life since school days and knew her habits well. They cooked together and laughed about small things until the conversation slowed. Anna felt the urge to speak but held back at first. She tested the idea of sharing by asking Mary about trust and change. Mary spoke honestly about how change can feel like a gift and a burden together. She said people often fear losing their old self more than facing something new. Anna listened closely and felt seen without revealing her secret. That comfort mattered to her and helped her decide to keep quiet a little longer. She thanked Mary with a warm smile and felt lighter for it. Later that night, Anna opened the box again and spread the papers across the table. She arranged them carefully and took notes in plain words she could understand. She noticed patterns that pointed toward long-term support rather than quick gain. The idea of using the value to help others began to take shape. It felt right in a way she could not explain fully. Anna returned to the barn more often and began cleaning it piece by piece. She swept floors and repaired loose boards with steady hands. Each small task felt like a conversation with her father. The barn slowly transformed from a reminder of loss into a space of possibility. She imagined it filled with activity again, but of a different kind. As weeks passed, Anna noticed how people in town struggled quietly. A shop owner worried about rent, and a farmer worried about broken equipment. She listened more and spoke less and learned what truly mattered to her community. These moments shaped her thoughts more than any document could. She began to see a path that combined care with responsibility. One afternoon Anna received a message from a distant cousin asking about the barn sale. The tone was friendly but curious, and it made her uneasy. She replied politely and said nothing had been decided. The message reminded her that news travels fast and not always kindly. She strengthened her resolve to stay focused and grounded. Anna met with the advisor Ben mentioned and listened carefully to every word. The advisor spoke clearly and emphasized planning over impulse. He confirmed the value was real and stable and also manageable if treated with respect. He praised her patience and warned against letting excitement lead. Anna felt reassured and more confident in her instincts. Back home, Anna wrote a letter to herself describing the person she wanted to be. She wrote about fairness and humility and service. She promised to remember where she came from and who helped her along the way. The act of writing grounded her and gave shape to her thoughts. It felt like claiming her own voice. One quiet morning, Anna stood in the barn doorway and watched sunlight spill across the floor. She imagined workshops and shared spaces and learning happening here. She pictured people working side by side with purpose. The idea felt alive and warm. She smiled and knew she was close to a decision. As the sun climbed higher, Anna locked the barn and walked away slowly. She felt gratitude instead of fear and curiosity instead of doubt. The discovery under the floor had pushed her into a deeper understanding of herself. She was no longer just reacting to change. She was shaping it. That night, Anna slept deeply and dreamed of building something lasting. She saw her father watching again, but this time he smiled. When she woke, she felt ready to take the next step. Part 3 of her journey ended not with answers but with clarity. The real change was now ready to begin. Anna woke early with a calm strength she had not felt before. The decision she had been circling now felt clear and steady inside her. She made tea and stood by the window watching the town wake slowly. This morning did not feel heavy or rushed. It felt like the start of something honest. She dressed simply and drove to the barn while the air was still cool. When she unlocked the doors and stepped inside, she paused to breathe it in. The smell of wood and earth felt familiar and welcoming. This place no longer held secrets that frightened her. It held purpose waiting to be shaped. Anna spent the morning walking through the barn and marking small changes in her notebook. She planned repairs that would keep the structure strong and safe. She imagined work tables and shared tools and open space for learning. Each idea felt connected to the values her father lived by. She smiled as she worked because the barn finally made sense again. Later that day, Anna visited Ben and told him her plan. She spoke clearly and without hesitation. She explained she wanted to turn the barn into a place where people could learn skills and help each other grow. She wanted it to stay simple and useful, not flashy or loud. Ben listened closely and nodded with approval. Ben said her father once spoke of building something that would outlast him quietly. He said this plan sounded like that dream finding its way back home. He offered his time and knowledge without asking for anything in return. Anna thanked him with genuine warmth. She felt supported in a way that gave her courage. Anna met with the advisor again and shared her vision. They discussed how to structure things carefully and responsibly. The advisor helped her plan in a way that protected the future and served the present. Nothing was rushed and every step was measured. Anna felt confident knowing she was not acting on impulse. Word slowly spread that Anna was no longer selling the barn. Some people were surprised and some were curious. She answered questions simply and avoided details. She focused on actions instead of explanations. Over time, the town accepted the change as part of her path. As repairs began, neighbors stopped by to offer help. Some brought tools and some brought stories. The barn filled with quiet activity and shared effort. Anna worked alongside everyone with equal care. She did not act like someone above others. She acted like someone among them. One afternoon, Anna found the old plank again and paused. She placed her hand over the spot where everything began. She felt gratitude instead of shock now. The discovery had not been about what was hidden. It had been about what was revealed within her. Months passed and the barn became a place of learning and connection. People gathered to fix things together and share knowledge. Young and old worked side by side with patience. The space held laughter and focus without losing its calm. Anna watched it grow with quiet pride. Anna kept the box locked away but no longer feared it. The value it represented now flowed into something real and living. She used it wisely and transparently with guidance and care. Every choice reflected the trust her father placed in her. That trust guided her more than any paper ever could. One evening, Anna stood outside the barn as the sun set across the fields. The building looked strong and alive once more. She felt her father near in the work that continued without his hands. She whispered thanks into the open air. The words felt complete. Anna returned home that night feeling whole. Her life had changed not through sudden gain but through steady purpose. She had honored the past without being trapped by it. She had chosen a future that reflected who she truly was. The old barn had given her more than answers. It had given her direction. The story ended not with wealth or noise but with meaning. Anna found her place by listening closely and acting kindly. The floor that once hid a secret now supported something greater. And her life moved forward grounded and clear.